Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War, and we are on to this. Next month here, guys, is going to be a big month, because all throughout May and June, it's the Vicksburg Siege. We're going to have a lot of Vicksburg action. Ultimately, that's going to culminate on July 4th, just one day after the Battle of Gettysburg. So we got a big 2 months coming up here on the year of 1863. Ooh, and the Union, especially these three battles that we're going to do today, the Confederates are looking like the Union coming up, and they're just making shitty choices. And you would swear McClellan switch sides over to the Confederates, because they are doing shitty. Coming up on this week, we got the battles of Port Gibson, Chalk Bluff, and Raymond, two of which Chalk Bluff is kind of sandwiched by two preliminary battles in the Siege of Vicksburg, and then Chalk Bluff is a little nothing in Missouri, I believe. And then the next three battles we'll have is all Siege of Vicksburg related, and then the next week after that will be the actual. We'll talk about the whole Siege of Vicksburg, because that is the opening day, which lasts all the way for 2 months. But we'll cover it in probably one episode. But coming up first, we got the Battle of Port Gibson on May 1st, 1863. Ulysses S. Grant launched his campaign against Vicksburg in the spring of 1863, which we've already had a battle, I believe, 2 episodes ago, where it was Snyder's Bluff and Grand Gulf. Maybe even Cape Girardeau was part of that too. But we're already on the way to the siege, but we're heating things up here. He started his army south from Milliken's Bend on the west side of the Mississippi River. He intended to storm Grand Gulf, so I was right, while his subordinate Major General William T. Sherman and the 15th Corps deceived the main army in Vicksburg by feigning an assault on the Yazoo Bluffs. Grant would then detach Major General John A. McClernand's 13th Corps to Major General Nathaniel P. Banks's at Port Hudson, Louisiana, while Sherman hurried to join Grant and McPherson and the 17th Corps for an inland move against the railroad. Jeez. The Union fleet, however, failed to silence the Confederate batteries at Grand Gulf. Grant then sailed farther south and began crossing at Bruinsburg, Mississippi on April 30th. Well, Sherman's feint against the Yazoo Bluffs, which was the Battle of Snyder's Bluff, was a complete success, and only a single Confederate brigade was detached south. Yeah, so that's all Sherman wanted to do, keep those guys from coming to us real quick.
All right. Fantastic. Well, working out for them. Not so well for the old Ribs. The only Confederate cavalry in the area were Adams's regiment. Had been ordered away to pursue Grierson's raiders. So he's going to fight some more, a little group of,
which was only sent for that purpose.
Right. And Major General John S. Bowen performed a reconnaissance in force to determine Grant's intentions. So he's like, we need to go see what's going on here. See what Grant's doing. Who's this Bowen guy?
No, he's general, Major General.
Major General Bowen, huh? Bowen moved south from Grand Gulf with Brigadier General Martin E. Green's brigade. Took up a position astride the Rodney Road, just southwest of Port Gibson, near Magnolia Church. A single brigade of reinforcements from Vicksburg under Brigadier General Edward D. Tracy arrived later and was posted across the Bruinsburg Road, 2 miles north of Green's position. Brigadier General William E. Baldwin's brigade arrived later as well, and he was positioned to support Green's brigade. 100-foot tall hills separated by nearly vertical ravines choked with cranbrakes and underbrush rendered Bowen's position tenable, despite the overwhelming Union force heading his way.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to get up on the hills to get you. So
it's like nothing but viney stuff, and it's crazy.
Thickets and all that shit. Well, the absence of any Confederate cavalry would have a major impact on the campaign. You can't not have cavalry. If Bowen had known that... if Bowen had known that Grant's men were landing at Bruinsburg and not Rodney, he would have taken a position on the bluffs above Bruinsburg, clearly, which would deny Grant's army a bridgehead into the area.
Right.
Federal efforts to push rapidly inland were slowed because McClernand had forgotten to issue rations to his men. Hey, I know everybody's got to eat, but...
Oh, they didn't eat? Well, I did. What's up, breakfast?
Jeez.
Nice little muffin afterwards.
Well, despite this delay, however, the Army of the Tennessee moved into the river bluffs unopposed and pushed rapidly towards Port Gibson. Shortly after midnight, May 1st, advanced elements of the 14th Division under Brigadier General Eugene Carr engaged Confederate pickets near the Schaefer House. Sporadic skirmishing and artillery fire continued till 3 a.m.
Damn.
Wary of Tracy's brigade to the north, McClernand posted Brigadier General Peter J. Osterhaus's 9th Division facing that direction. Having developed each other's positions, the opposing forces sat down and waited for daylight. They're like, we're here, we see each other,
right.
It's too dark to do anything, rest assured, you better be up before the rooster crows.
That's crazy. You're within 100 yards of your enemy, laying down, closing your eyes for a little nappy poo.
If you can.
Right. Well, General Carr scouted the ground before him and realized that a frontal assault through the crane breaks would be fruitless. He was going to have one brigade move slowly through the cane breaks, while the 2nd Brigade would descend into the Widow's Creek bottoms and strike for the Confederates' left flank.
All right.
Brigadier General Elvin P. Hovey's 12th Division arrived and surged forward just as Carr's men were storming the Confederate position. Both flanks returned. Greene's men broke and ran. Oh, man. Uh-oh. McClernand stopped to reorganize, then launched into a series of grandiose speeches until Grant pointed out that the Confederate had just simply withdrawn to a more defensible position.
Like, hey, they didn't retreat yet there, McClernand. Right.
I was getting ready, bud. He's like, oh, I knew that. Right. Reinforced by Brigadier General A.J. Smith's 10th Division and Stevenson's brigade of McPherson's 15th, 12th, 17th Corps, McClernand assumed the pursuit.
With 20,000 men crowded into a 1.5 mile front, McClernand's plan appeared to be to force his way past the Confederate line. A flanking assault by Colonel Francis Cockrell of the Confederates' Missouri Brigade crumpled the Federal right flank and gave McClernand pause. Well, sundown found the two sides settling into a stalemate along a broad front on the Rodney Road several miles from Port Gibson. On the Bruinsburg Road front, Osterhaus had been content to pressure Tracy's command with Federal sharpshooters and artillery, occasionally launching an unsupported regiment against the Confederate line. Major General James McPherson showed up late in the afternoon with Brigadier General John Eugene Smith's brigade, though.
Oh, look at that shit. He was donning a cloak to disguise his rank. He reviewed the front lines and quickly devised a turning movement that would render untenable the entire Confederate flank.
The lanky flank.
Lanky flank. 20 minutes after the troops had been staged for the assault, the Confederates were retreating into the Bayou Pierre bottoms, having left behind several hundred prisoners.
Hey, get your guys back.
Well, we don't need you. We're out. Don't tell them where we're going.
Right.
Where are you going? We're going down to the Bayou Pierre bottoms.
Oh, we won't say nothing. Be careful.
Right. The road to his rear now threatened. Bowen commenced retreating through Port Gibson to the north shore of Bayou Pierre. He's like, oh, man, what the hell's going on here?
May 2nd, Grant quickly maneuvered Bowen out of position by sending McPherson across the Bayou Pierre at a ford several miles upstream. Struck with the realization that McPherson could cut him off from the bridge over the Big Black River, Bowen ordered the formidable defenses at Grand Gulf abandoned, the magazine exploded, and the heavy artillery destroyed. Union gunboats investigating the nature of the explosion arrived and took Grand Gulf without a shot.
Fantastic.
Which is good for them because Grant understood the nature of this explosion and rode to Grand Gulf with a small escort, and he enjoyed his first bath in weeks.
Oh.
And he celebrated the capture of what would become his central supply depot as he moved inland.
That shit worked out just fantastic for him, right?
He was like, dude, what happened there?
Let's go.
There's a saloon there, right?
All right. As Grant relaxed, he caught up on correspondence, including a message from Banks that he was nowhere near Port Hudson. Grant's plan to detach McClernand to Banks would have to wait.
What the hell are you doing, Banks?
Too late to do anything more than affirm Bowen's decision, Major General William W. Loring arrived and took command of the Confederates. He's like, damn, what you do? Son, I guess.
Suck, dude.
Heavy rear guard activity took place as the Confederates scrambled to remove their force across the narrow bridge. Advanced elements of the 17th Corps arrived in time to save the bridge from destruction.
Nice.
The ragtag army that had fought so well at Port Gibson would not rest until they entered the Warrenton fortifications nearly 10 miles away.
Gotta give it up, man. Well, here they began improving the fortifications along the roads to Vicksburg, expecting that Grant would be close behind.
Right.
Well, Grant, however, was sitting in some suds, and he'd had other plans, though. The roads on the west bank of the Big Black River were open all the way to Mississippi State Capitol,
Right.
and the critical rail link to Vicksburg. Against this target, Grant poised his army to strike. Although most of the Port Gibson battlefield is still privately owned, the Civil War Battle Trust and its partners have acquired about 645 acres.
Fantastic.
Yeah, good.
Good for them.
644 acres, and most of it's still owned by private. How big was the damn battlefield?
Right, gee, that's ridiculous. It's crazy. Moving on. Battle of Chalk Bluff, also known as the skirmish at Chalk Bluff. Sounds better when you say battle.
Right.
Confederate General John Marmaduke departed his camps in Arkansas in the spring of 1863 with 5,000 cavalry, bound for southeastern Missouri. In sharp fighting at the Battle of Cape Girardeau, Marmaduke was defeated, ran away with his tail between his legs, and he began a withdrawal on the 27th of April towards Helena, Arkansas. His line of march was on a road. On a road. It was on a road on Crowley's Ridge, a long rise that offered protection from its flanks.
Okay.
As the surrounding terrain was mainly marshy. Union forces under Brigadier General William Vandiver had pursued Marmaduke through Missouri to Chalk Bluff, Arkansas, where Marmaduke planned to cross the St. Francis River, whose steep, chalky white clay banks made the fording the river difficult for cavalry.
I bet. Well, in an attempt to protect his men while they were crossing the river, Marmaduke set up a rear guard along the ridge that he hoped would protect his engineers and pioneers as they constructed a bridge strong enough to allow the passage of his entire division. He formed an initial defensive line at the hamlet of 4 Mile, while posting his reserves in a second line a mile away at Gravel Hill, which was on the crest of the ridge above the river. They began digging entrenchments to forestall any Union attack.
Fantastic. Look at you guys. Fighting began May 1st, continued into the next day. Vandiver's men were unable to drive the Confederates from the heights, although Marmaduke's rear guard sustained heavy casualties, which you knew that was happening.
Right.
It delayed the numerically superior Union forces long enough as to allow for the construction team to finish building the bridge and allow Marmaduke's men's main force to cross that river. However, because of the heavy casualties that were suffered by the Confederates, Marmaduke was forced to end the expedition and return to his camp.
Like, I can't do no more.
What you guys do? We build a bridge.
Right. Now the Union's going to use.
Right.
But Confederate sources, including Marmaduke, and a few letters from Confederate enlisted soldiers differ by stating the Union forces suffered significant casualties
I'm sure they
in
suffered
trying
some.
to take the entrenched ridges.
Right.
General Thompson of the Confederates moved the artillery across the river by raft the first night, so while trying to take the ridges, the Union forces were suffering cannon fire coming from over the right shoulder and continue down the long line of their formation.
Makes sense.
So I'm sure they took some.
Makes sense. While in some respects Marmaduke tactically won the Battle of Chalk Bluff, the Union forces claimed a strategic victory since it had abandoned his offspring.
Damn, Marmaduke, you deadbeat son of a bitch.
Hey, man, that's a tactical. I mean,
Yeah, tactically, he was like, I don't have to raise these sons of bitches. And that fucking Union strategic is the abandonment.
Yeah, the Union forces claimed a strategic win because Marmaduke had abandoned his spring offensive.
Right.
That's what it was. The battle is commemorated today in the small Chalk Bluff Battlefield Park, which preserves a portion of the field and has been listed on the NRHP. That's the National Register of Historic Places.
Right.
Chalk Bluff Hiking Trail traverses parts of the battlefield with interpretive wayside markers and panels. A few minor skirmishes occurred there later in the war, as both armies sent raiding parties to control the river crossing. The towns of Chalk Bluff, 4 Mile, and Gravel Hill are no longer extant.
Okay, well, bye though for those guys, huh?
Right.
Which is going to move us to the largish battle of this episode, which is the Battle of Raymond. Actually, a pretty good battle and one that the Union's kind of not desperately needed, but definitely needed. It was fought on May 12th, 1863, near Raymond, Mississippi, during the Vicksburg campaign. Early in the war, Union military leadership developed the Anaconda Plan, which we heard about early in the war. And their strategy was to defeat the Confederate States of America, with a significant component of which was controlling the Mississippi River.
Yep.
which they did end up getting Louisiana.
They did.
But just couldn't get that Vicksburg. So they're like, now it's time to move against these guys.
Got to do it. Got to do it.
And they want to get the Confederates' hands off the river, which served as both a strong defensive position by commanding the river and served as a linchpin between the two halves of the Confederacy. So Vicksburg's been the key all along, man, and Grant's been literally sitting here for 2 years trying to take this.
All right, Union Navy elements were sent upriver from New Orleans in May to try to take the city, a move that was ultimately unsuccessful, which we know. Late June, a joint Army-Navy expedition returned to make another campaign against Vicksburg. Union Navy leadership decided that the city could not be taken without more infantrymen.
Yep. Remember, the Navy was like, we could do this on our own.
Right, and then guess what? Those infantrymen were not forthcoming.
Right.
An attempt to cut a canal across a meander of the river, bypassing Vicksburg, and it failed.
Yeah.
It's not the one that kept on knocking over everything.
Kept
washing away everything.
Kept flooding, and it wasn't deep enough.
Idiots. Late November, about 40,000 Union infantry commanded by Major General Ulysses S. Grant began moving south towards Vicksburg from a starting point in Tennessee, somewhere in Tennessee. Grant ordered a retreat after a supply depot and part of its supply line were destroyed during the Holly Springs raid and the Forest West Tennessee raid.
Yep. Well, meanwhile, another arm of the expedition under the command of William T. Sherman left Memphis, Tennessee on the same day as the Holly Springs raid, traveled down the Mississippi. After diverting up the Yazoo, Sherman's men began went up the Yazoo. Sherman's men began skirmishing with Confederate soldiers defending a line of hills above the Chickasaw Bayou, which we've covered that. A Union attack on December 29th was defeated decisively at the Battle of Chickasaw Bayou, and Sherman's men withdrew on January 1st, 1863, saying, we don't need it.
They did.
Did what we had to do.
Early 1863, Grant planned further operations against Vicksburg. Some of these plans included revisiting the 1862 canal site attempt, a new plan to cut a canal into the Mississippi River near Lake Providence, Louisiana, and navigating through bayous to bypass Vicksburg. So that's rough to look all there. Expeditions sent through the Yazoo River and the Steele's Bayou failed to find a viable alternate route. Dude, that's rough. You know, I mean, it might look good, and then all of a sudden, boom, nothing. By March 29th, these alternatives were abandoned by Grant. He was like, screw that, I don't have time. Leaving him with the choices of attacking Vicksburg from directly across the river, pulling back to Memphis and then attacking overland from the north, or marching south on the Louisiana side of the river and then crossing it below the city.
Either or you're attacking it right by the damn Vicksburg.
Attacking the enemy from across the river. Grant could have risked heavy casualties, but pulling his men back to Memphis could have been interpreted as a retreat and politically disastrous. This led Grant to choose the southward movement.
We're going through the Louisiana side, baby. We're going to go below the city.
Yeah, but if he went, he should have went back to Memphis and went around. But everybody would, yeah, right. But still, screw that. Like, man, don't question my my tactical plans here.
Right. Imagine how many. That's the thing too. Imagine how many of these decisions to either attack or not attack, or to come around and try this thing was political because they were scared of the backlash of the country. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Sad. Well, April 29th, Union Navy ships bombarded Confederate river batteries at Grand Gulf in preparation for a crossing, but they did not silence the position. Grant crossed his men the next day, even farther south, though, at Bruinsburg, which we said, and he drove inland with 24,000 men, defeating an 8,000-man Confederate blocking force at Port Gibson, which we just covered. Grant could either move north now towards Vicksburg or head east and later turn to the west, attacking Vicksburg from this direction. Well, he chose that second option as it provided a better chance of capturing Vicksburg's Confederate garrison and its commander, who was Lieutenant General John C. Pemberton.
All right. Well, Grant put his plan in motion by having Sherman's 15th Corps cross the Mississippi at the now abandoned Grand Gulf position and then drive towards Auburn. To Sherman's left, Major General John McClernand's 13th Corps covered the crossings of the Big Black River. And on the Union right was Major General John McPherson's 17th Corps. McPherson, who lacked experience in leading a sizable body of men in independent command, was directed to advance to Raymond via Utica. McPherson's advance was resisted by little other than militia.
He's like, oh, this is going smoothly.
It's great. Union cavalrymen raided the New Orleans, Jackson, and Great Northern Railroad, damaging about 1.5 miles of the line. May 11th, Grant ordered McPherson to take his command to Raymond and resupply there while maintaining the impression that he was targeting Jackson. Okay.
Well, Pemberton responded to the Union movements by moving his forces north along the course of the Big Black River, shadowing the Union movements but never crossing the river. Meanwhile, reinforcements were brought up from elsewhere in the Confederacy and concentrated at Jackson. General Joseph Johnston, haven't heard his name in a while, he was ordered on May 10th to travel to Jackson to command the growing force, which would eventually amount to about 6,000 men. Not really that big.
No.
One of these units was the brigade of Brigadier General John Gregg, which had been sent to Jackson from Port Hudson, Louisiana. In his only aggressive action at the time, Pemberton sent Gregg a telegram ordering him to take his brigade to Raymond with hopes of intercepting a Union unit rumored to be at Utica.
Ooh, rumored.
Well, they were at one point, but not no more.
Both Gregg and Pemberton believed that the Union force was only a single brigade, which had been numbered around 1,500. In reality, the Union force at Utica was McPherson's corps, which numbered about 10,000 to 12,000 men. They were like, oh, shit. Expecting the main Union assault to come at the Big Black River, Pemberton believed that any of the movements towards Jackson via Raymond were simply feints.
I think they're just messing with us.
Look at that. He got at least one of them right. He gave Gregg orders to fall back to Jackson if Union troops pushed through Raymond, but to attack the rear of Grant's line if the Union army pivoted towards the Big Black.
Right.
All right.
Well, Gregg and his men reached Raymond on May 11th, expecting to find Colonel Wirt Adams' Confederate cavalry in the town, but Adams' men were where they were supposed to conduct the reconnaissance mission we mentioned earlier. Instead, the only Confederate force in Raymond was a small command of 40 cavalrymen, mainly young locals, and a separate 5-man detachment.
Oh, man.
Gregg sent the 40-man unit down the road towards Utica while keeping the 5 men for carrier service, and sent a message to Adams telling him, dude, we need your forces over here in Raymond.
Right.
The unexpected lack of cavalrymen at Raymond may have been due to Adams' misunderstanding of a poorly written letter from Pemberton.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they had a problem back in the day, man.
Right, it was garbage.
They're writing all fast and trying to get the message as fast as possible. You can't understand shit.
What the hell was what?
At least tell the courier or whoever you're sending it off with, like, this is basically what the letter says.
What the hell is reading it? It's like bacon, eggs, and steak for dinner. What? Oh, you gave me his damn dinner list.
Pick up gallon of milk.
Fine gallon of milk.
Right. Shit.
Adams there's like, fine.
They're like, wait, milk
what the fuck's a gallon?
Milk comes in gallons?
Where does this guy come from? Adams later sent a unit of 50 cavalrymen to aid Gregg. They arrived that night, morning of May 12th, 1863. The scouting force reported approaching Union soldiers, and Gregg, still anticipating only a single Union brigade, prepared for battle with the force numbering around 3,000 to 4,000 men, still greatly outnumbered.
Right.
Scouts had been unable to provide an accurate count of Union strength. Believing that he could easily defeat the approaching enemy, Gregg responded aggressively.
Yeah.
He ordered Colonel Hiram Granberry to take the 7th Texas Infantry Regiment and the 1st Tennessee Infantry Battalion to a rise near the junction of the roads of Utica and Port Gibson.
All right. Well, the Texans were to attract Union attention, draw them into a cul-de-sac shaped portion of 14 Mile Creek.
Right.
Colonel Calvin H. Walker of the 3rd Tennessee Infantry Regiment were sent to the reverse slope of some high ground northeast of the bridge over 14 Mile Creek. 50th Tennessee Infantry Regiment and the 10th and 30th Tennessee Infantry Regiment, which is consolidated together, they moved down the Gallatin Road to the left. Gregg planned to contest his line with Walker's and Granberry's men and then have the Tennesseans down the Gallatin Road conduct a flanking attack against the Union right. Hiram Bledsoe's, what's up with the Hirams?
All right.
His Missouri battery and its 3 cannons were positioned with the 1st Tennessee Battalion. The battery had orders to fire on any Union attempts to cross the bridge over the creek on Utica Road.
Damn
Clearly.
Right. 41st Tennessee Infantry Regiment was held in reserve about half a mile behind the 3rd Tennessee. Nice. Near the Raymond Cemetery. The line was stretched thin to cover the 3 roads and contained gaps between units. Obviously, they only had
6,000 guys, or whatever the hell it was.
Heavy undergrowth along the position restricted Gregg's ability to clearly observe the Union forces when they came, preventing an accurate assessment of McPherson's strength.
Yeah.
Man, he's going to find out. It's way
about to.
more.
Well, the fighting opened on the morning of May 12th when the leading Union troops, which was a cavalry force, ran into skirmishers sent out by Granberry. The Union troops were surprised to meet resistance, and skirmishing began at a range of about 100 yards. Gregg was informed by a scout that the Union force numbered only about 2,500 to 3,000 men, Knowing that scouts frequently overestimated enemy strengths, this report confirmed Gregg's belief that he was facing at most a brigade.
Wow.
So they know that these scouts are idiots and they still use them.
All right.
And now, but he still thinks maybe there's a brigade. No, there's a whole freaking corps. Bledsoe's cannons opened fire at the advancing Union troops, and Union artillery began firing as well, and we're dug in now. Which side opened the battle, though, is not known.
Oh.
I would assume it'd be the Confederates firing at the Union first, right?
I think smoke from the firing clouded the air, reduced effectiveness of both sides' artillery.
I bet.
Around 9 o'clock, McPherson realized the Confederates in front of his force represented more than just skirmishers. He began.
He's like, oh shit, there's more than that.
All right. He began deploying for battle. McPherson used cavalry to cover his flanks and brought Brigadier General Elias Dennis's brigade of the 4 regiments to the front. Okay, he had 4 of them.
Correct.
The 6 cannons of the 8th Michigan light artillery battery were brought up to duel.
Usually when we hear a Michigan
Bledsoe's
regiment,
battery.
they do terrible, though.
Right.
So not this time.
Right. They brought up the Michigan's artillery to duel Bledsoe's battery. Dennis's forced the Confederates back and sent a skirmish line across the creek. The 3rd Ohio battery also arrived on the scene, strengthening the Union line, which now had a 12-3 advantage in cannons.
Well, that's just pretty typical of that. Well, Union Brigadier General John E. Smith's 5 Regiment Brigade of Logan's 6,500-man division arrived and attacked the Confederate line. Of Smith's regiments, only the 23rd Indiana Infantry Regiment was successfully able to cross the creek. The others became bogged down in the heavy undergrowth near the creek.
Damn.
With the Union troops concentrated on a single road, Gregg decided to pull his troops closer together and attack. His plan was for the 7th Texas and the 3rd Tennessee to attack an echelon, and the 50th Tennessee and the 10th and 30th Tennessee were to move off the Gallatin Road and strike the Union line in the flank, which Gregg expected to be exposed.
Oh, but was it?
Expected.
Between the 2 regiments, Gregg's flanking force was composed of roughly 1,200. That's 1,200 men.
Right.
Gregg also hoped that the 2 flanking units could capture McPherson's artillery.
Not going to happen.
As he was concerned that the Union artillery advantage would eventually silence Bledsoe's guns. It will. Gregg's Texans hit the 20th Ohio Infantry Regiment and the 68th Ohio Infantry very hard.
Hit them hard.
The former regiment held, but the latter broke for the rear. The Union line began to buckle. It was rallied by the division commander, Major General John Logan. McPherson, in his inexperience, overestimated the strength of Confederate force he was facing. They both did.
Well,
I mean, he underestimated. The Confederates underestimated, and this guy's overestimated.
right. The 3rd Tennessee counterattacked the Indianians, who were driven back across the creek and reformed beside the 20th Ohio and the 20th Illinois Infantry. The attacking Tennesseans shifted to the southeast and advanced towards the 45th Illinois Infantry. And then Gregg brought the 41st Tennessee up from the reserve, but he did not have the Union line scouted and was thus uninformed of his true strength. Heavy smoke and dust limited Gregg's ability to see the battle, and events began to escape his control.
Hey.
Oh, shit. We're about to have
Chaos.
anarchy around here.
A 3rd Union Brigade under the command of Brigadier General John Stevenson had held back in the rear due to dust clouds kicked up by Smith's brigade.
Kicking up dust.
Right, we can't go anywhere. As the battle grew in intensity, Stevenson began moving his men to a position behind the 8th Michigan Battery, but was initially held back until Confederate intentions became clear. The brigade was then ordered by McPherson to support Dennis and Smith after Confederate attack hit. Stevenson's 4 regiments were split up, 2 being sent to support Smith and Dennis, and the others moving to shore up the Union right flank. The latter movement meant that Gregg's 2 flanking regiments would not strike an exposed Union up.
Yeah, you thought you were going to, Greggy.
Yep. Not today, Charlie.
No, well, when some of the men of the 50th Tennessee opened fire on the Union line, the elements of surprise was lost.
All right.
The unit's commander tried to inform Gregg that the Union force was much larger than expected,
Right.
but the messenger could not find him.
Oh, of course not.
50th Tennessee fell back to a defensive position without informing other Confederate units. The commander of the 10th and 30th Consolidated Tennessee had orders not to engage until after the 50th had entered the fighting, but can't do that.
Right.
Gregg's flank attack had stalled, 1 unit hanging out of the fighting and the other waiting for the former to enter.
Oh,
Jeez,
my.
Dude.
And that's some sad shit.
Wow.
Fucking Gregg.
This is literally flip
Right.
We're usually reading that shit about the Union,
Right,
dude.
right. On the other end of the Confederate line, an attack by the 20th Illinois drove back to 7th Texas. At this point in the fighting, the lines had realigned so that Union troops held the 125 yards of the creek east of the bridge and fired north. On the other side of the curve in the creek, the Confederates held 100 yards and fired south.
Wow, isn't that crazy? At this point, you have the North
Right.
firing north and the South firing south. That's a little turn of events there.
Right. Wait. Can we turn around, guys?
We'll do it peacefully until we get to our...
They're like, halftime. Switch sides. Good game. Good half. Meanwhile, the 3rd Tennessee continued to advance, expecting that its left flank would be covered by the 50th Tennessee.
Well, the 50th Tennessee don't know what the hell they're doing.
Nope. With the latter unit not in position, the 3rd Tennessee flank was exposed to fire from the 31st Illinois Infantry Regiment. Union troops counterattacked the 3rd Tennessee with 4 regiments and drove it back after a 45-minute fight. Damn, at least it lasted that long. Only to be staved off by the 41st.
The 41st is like, all right, we got you. Well, the 20th Ohio also attacked the 7th Texas. The Confederate unit retreated and split in two, some falling back to the 1st Tennessee Battalion and the rest to the 10th and 30th Tennessee. More Union artillery arrived on the field with 4 24-pounder howitzers from Battery D, 1st Illinois Light Artillery deployed.
Screw that.
The battle was growing chaotic due to thick undergrowth and clouds of smoke, and units on both sides fought more and more individuals with less direction from high-ranking officers.
Right.
At about 13:30, which is 1:30 p.m., a brigade from Union Brigadier General Marcellus M. Crocker's division, commanded by Colonel John B. Sanborn, arrived on the field and moved to support Logan's left flank, and the Confederates are in some deep shit.
Deep shit. 2 regiments from Crocker's division were also sent to aid Smith and Stevenson as the 7th Texas was withdrawing. A Union regimental commander determined that the 2 new regiments were not needed, and the reinforcements took up a reserve position.
Yeah, just hang out back there.
Just hang out back there. Rest. Get your rations. We can't because they forgot them.
Hey. McClernand's an idiot.
Oh, shit, that's right.
It is McClernand, right?
I think so. Yeah. The 50th Tennessee and the 10th and the 30th Tennessee prepared to advance together, but they paused to await further orders.
No.
The expected orders did not arrive, and the latter unit moved to the right, breaking contact between the 2 units.
They're like, fuck it, we're leaving. Then in the 10th and 30th, we're like, what do we do?
They're like, where in the fuck is the 50th?
Oh, wait, no, the 10th and 30th moved.
All right. Well, the men of the 50th heard the sound of heavy fighting to the rear, to the right, and they began to take fire from this direction. The unit then fell back to the position it had occupied in the morning.
Wow,
It's
so
like,
they know
we should have just
how.
stayed here, guys.
Right.
This worked out.
Well, the 10th and 30th Tennessee haven't either been ordered by Gregg towards the center of the line to shore up the exposed flank of the 3rd Tennessee, or they had been driven by the Union troops toward that position. Either way, they moved to a point in the line near where the 3rd Tennessee was fighting Smith's men.
Right.
The new deployment left a gap between the 10th and 30th Tennessee and the 41st Tennessee, and you don't want gaps.
No gaps. McPherson was able to bring up 22 cannons onto the field, and some of them ran forced across the creek.
22 cannons. This is ridiculous.
Right. And they made contact with the 50th Tennessee. The Union artillery began to fire on the exposed 10th and 30th Tennessee, knowing that a retreat would break the Confederate line and that his men would suffer casualties if they remained steady. The unit's commander, Colonel Randall William McGavock, ordered an attack against the 7th Missouri Infantry Regiment.
That's one thing you don't see often.
Right.
Missouri Regiment for the Union.
Right. Well, which the 7th just recently crossed that very creek.
Yes, they did.
McGavock was killed early in the charge, but his men could drive the Missourians back before being halted by fire from the 31st Illinois.
Well, but a counterattack drove them back to their starting point, but an attempt by the Missouri Regiment to gain further ground was also repulsed.
Oh.
Gregg did not know that his left flank was held by the 50th Tennessee, stupid, and he ordered the 41st Tennessee in this direction. Well, at the same time, the 50th Tennessee, on their own accord, began moving to the right.
Yeah, the 50th is on their own little thing right now.
Where the sounds of battle were coming from, so the 2 units literally flipped.
Right.
So nothing happened.
Right.
The weight of superior Union numbers was beginning to tell. Gregg determined that a retreat was necessary, and he ordered the 1st Tennessee Battalion to feign an attack against Crocker's men so they could cover the withdrawal of the spent 7th Texas and 3rd Tennessee. He was getting pounded right now.
Oh, dude. That was a messed up. Gregg ain't very good.
Gregg is not very good.
And these other idiots, the 50th, and come on.
All right.
Tennessee. You Tennessee idiots. Volunteers.
Says a lot.
The Union troops fell for the bluff. And no, you never take a volunteer for anything. Volunteers are not good workers. I'm not getting paid for this. I don't give a shit.
All right, welcome.
The Union troops fell for the bluff
Of course
and
they
withdrew, allowing the 1st Tennessee Battalion to cover the Confederate retreat.
That's not good.
The 10th and 30th Tennessee began to withdraw on its own.
They're just see the 10th and 30th and the 50th. They're just like whatever.
Right, we're just doing this
Done
shit.
with this shit.
But then it attacked a Union regiment from Ohio. Wait a minute. Only to be driven back by strong Union forces.
Well, they tried.
The 50th Tennessee either moved to the Utica Road during the retreat and covered it while falling back, or they withdrew via the Gallatin Road.
Either or, they were gone.
6 companies of the 3rd Kentucky Mounted Infantry Regiment arrived on the field unexpectedly.
See, look at these guys. They're just a willy-nilly in it all over the place.
Like, oh, shit.
3rd Kentucky Mounted Infantry Regiment is just walking by like, there's a fucking battle.
Oh, damn. How did we not hear this?
Right. Oh, jeez.
The retreat occurred over 2 roads, and Gregg's men fell back through the town of Raymond
Like he's supposed to be, and he's going to Jackson.
and onto the road to Jackson before stopping for the night in some woods near a local cemetery.
Well, they were then joined by 1,000 men under the command of Brigadier General W.H.T. Walker that evening. Fighting ended around 4 p.m., which is pretty early. Union soldiers entered Raymond, where they found and consumed a meal of fried chicken and lemonade
Nice.
that the local women had prepared for Gregg's men because they all expected a Confederate victory.
Oh,
Damn.
wow.
Gregg's men abandoned their wounded and fell back to Jackson the next day. McPherson did not pursue because they never do, but he cites the difficulty of the terrain for doing so.
Right.
The Union forces were also very disorganized. Yeah, we got to regroup here. Something the whole thing was
Both
chaos.
The whole thing, it was stupidity.
Well, Ann Martin, a civilian resident of Raymond, reported that Union soldiers occupied the town and looted her house, and she wrote a letter to a family member stating that she had heard sounds of similar destruction from elsewhere in the town.
Oh, I bet.
Sure they did.
I bet. That was a known thing, man. These freaking.
You guys are a Confederate sympathizing city. We're coming in. We're taking
So,
your food.
you're lucky
We're
you
taking
ain't
your
dead.
supplies. We're taking everything. We're like,
Sometimes-
burn down your damn
Right,
village or
the whole village.
city.
That happened many times. Reports of Union
No,
many times.
No, we haven't had one where a town was burned down by occupiers.
They're not going to tell you that.
Of course you would.
Reports of Union casualties vary between 442 and 446. The historians William L. Shea and Terrence J. Winchell supported the latter number and broke down casualties at 68 killed, 341 wounded, and 37 missing. Good for you guys. Donald L. Miller agreed with this total as well, as did the historian Timothy B. Smith. So good. So there it is. 68 killed, 341 wounded, and 37
Right.
missing for the Union. For the South side, it was 442 with 66 killed, 339, and 37 missing. Man, look at that shit. That's pretty close. Oh, that's still Union.
Yes.
Confederate losses reported as either 514 with a breakdown of 72 killed, 252 wounded, 190 missing, or 515 with the extra loss being another man killed.
Obviously, that's kind of how that goes. Another statement of Confederate casualties was provided by McPherson, who claimed to have captured 720 Confederates and found another 103 slain on the field. Smith attributed the 515 figure to Gregg's post-battle report and notes that the casualty figures were later updated by a small count, but he goes on to say, we'll never ever know. Confederate losses were the heaviest in the 3rd Tennessee and the 7th Texas, yeah.
Yeah, that was rough.
In addition to the human casualties, the Confederates lost one of Bledsoe's cannons, which burst during the fighting.
Oh, shit.
I bet you that killed somebody. Union wounded were treated in field hospitals set up by local churches. A Confederate field hospital was run aside the Hinds County Courthouse. Okay. Union losses represent about 3% of McPherson's force, while Gregg, he lost a good old whopping 16%.
Ooh-wee. He's like, I just got my ass beat.
Yeah.
Damn. The fight at Raymond demonstrated to Grant that the Confederate force in Jackson was stronger than he had believed,
You think so?
leading him to decide that the Confederates there must be neutralized to allow him to attack Vicksburg without the risk of being caught between 2 Confederate armies.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Thinking that McPherson's corps was insufficient to take Jackson on his own, Grant decided to bring in his whole army to bear against the city.
He said, I got to abandon everything I was fenced to do because McPherson can't handle himself over there.
You got something done right, you got to do it your damn self.
Right.
He abandoned his previous plan to turn west and cross the big black
The big black.
the Big Black River at Edwards and Bolton. The previously planned movement was viewed as too risky with Johnston and the Jackson garrison left in the army's rear.
Union armies were.
Especially that McClernand's men had also encountered part of Pemberton's force elsewhere simultaneously as the battle at Raymond.
All right. Well, McClernand was ordered to move to Raymond. McPherson was to head northeast to Clinton and then strike Jackson, and Sherman was to approach the place from the southwest. Successful action against Jackson had the potential to remove its value as a Confederate reinforcement center and clear the area of Confederate troops.
Right.
From Pemberton's perspective, though, a Union movement against Jackson had the ability to sever the key railroad supply lines to Vicksburg,
Damn right.
which is the point. As a result, the Confederates would need to defeat Grant in open battle outside of the defenses of Vicksburg, and Pemberton's army moved east for this purpose. Sorry about your luck, Pemberton. Johnson had issued an order for Pemberton's forces to join with his at Clinton, but this was not possible due to Union control of the area.
Right.
Like, dude, we're here.
Right.
We got a battle.
Right. McPherson's handling of the battle was described as not a success and as far too cautious, or perhaps worse.
Wow.
timid.
It's anybody that has their name starts with a Mick for the Union.
Citing his piecemeal deployment of his troops and effective use of his artillery advantage.
Ineffective.
Right. He's like, come on, you had all this shit.
Right.
And you couldn't, come on. Miller also states that McPherson
Miller's a historian.
Yeah. He also states that McPherson mismanaged the battle and called the decision not to pursue a mistake.
It's always a mistake. They never pursue.
Never. Ballard concludes that McPherson had not formed an overall plan of command, instead just feeding troops into the fight, except not food, though.
Right.
Just feed them into war. And
Do you want a chicken leg? How about a
Right.
How about a
Confederate leg.
hot shot to the face or something?
You bring me one. Each Confederate leg is one chicken leg.
No, each Confederate leg you can eat.
Hell yeah!
That's a lot of meat.
All right. And he was also
Imagine carrying around a big ass human leg. Like,
chewing on that shit in battle. Oh man!
that's like the Renaissance Festival when they have a big ass turkey leg, but it'd be a big ass human leg.
Right. And walking around the prisoners afterwards, and you're just eating a big old leg. You guys actually thought you're going to beat us, huh?
Better say hi to Private fucking Johnson or whatever.
Right.
You want a bite?
Right. They probably would, too.
I bet you.
Right. And he was also accused of leaving tactical decisions to junior commanders.
Because he sucks.
Ballard attributes the Union victory to numerical advantage.
Yeah. As
rather
we just
than
said, he just
McPherson's
kept
general.
sending troops out there.
Right.
Fuck it. You overwhelm them, eventually you're going to win, right? Jeez. Well, historian Smith writes that McPherson did not earn high marks for handling of his corps and criticizes him for allowing the Confederates to have the tactical initiative for most of the fighting and for failing to properly coordinate his troops. He also believes that the Union general should have had plans for a pursuit. Bears, who's a historian, also criticizes Gregg for being too aggressive and failing to ascertain the strength of the force he was facing.
You dumbass.
Well, conversely,
He had the right mindset.
I mean, he was just going off the shit that he was given.
If it was what he thought was there, he probably would have won.
Yeah, it would have been a different whole outcome. Well, conversely, Smith believes that Gregg demonstrated real ability in planning, use of discretion, and inspiring his men.
Damn right he did.
Alternatively, writer Kevin Doherty attributes the Confederate defeat to Gregg's failure to gain an accurate assessment of McPherson's strength.
Exactly.
Obviously.
The only thing there.
Yeah, there's a big difference there.
Site of the battle was listed on the National Register of Historic Places on January 13th, 1972 as the Raymond Battlefield Site. The 1971 NRHP application form, it stated that the battlefield had been altered, but that it was still in good condition. At that time, the site had both publicly and privately owned elements and had restricted access. Oh, damn. Parts of the battlefield were used for agriculture, residential, industrial, or transportation purposes.
Well, so everything that you can use them for.
2 iterations of the Mississippi Highway 18 cut through the field. Construction of a newer iteration had required disinterring the Confederate dead from a burial trench.
Oh, no.
The battlefield location of Bledsoe's battery had been covered over by an industrial facility. That's messed up. And the road to Utica was overgrown and no longer in use.
Oh, that's still good, though.
All right.
The listing encompassed 1,440 acres of the battlefield, but only about 936 were still listed in 2010.
Wow.
Battle Raymond was one of 16 American Civil War battle sites studied by the Civil War Sites Advisory Commission in Mississippi. 1993, That same board study ranked the Raymond battlefield as in the tier of highest priority for protection because it's getting overtaken.
Right.
Reenactment of the battle took place on the site in 2001.
Oh, shit, look at that.
I'm sure they did it other years. In 2010, the site received another study, this time from the American Battlefield Protection Program, which that study focused on 5.6 thousand acres and deemed that 4,400 of those were potentially eligible for the historic register listing.
440 acres. That's just freaking humongous.
4,000.
Yeah, that's fucking stupid.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's land that will never, ever,
Right.
ever again be touched.
Right. Man. And they say there's...
Until...
And they say the world's crowded right now when we have 4,000 acres.
Well, that too,
there.
but I'm saying until there's an inevitable overcrowding, quote unquote, where
Right.
these shit starts getting taken down because we need to build here.
Well, whatever. As of 2010, 79% of the battlefield at Raymond was still considered intact.
Nice.
Including the Union artillery position, 14 Mile Creek, and part of the Utica Road.
Okay.
The Friends of Raymond group manages 135 acres of the site as the Raymond Military Park, providing public interpretation. Nice. As of 2010, the interpretation included a walking trail and signage.
Awesome.
You got signage everywhere.
Yeah, man. Over here in this spot.
December 2020, the Mississippi Department of Archives and History received a grant to purchase 43.71 acres at Raymond. The land covered by the grant connects tracts of land already publicly preserved.
All right, good for them. So they needed that little to make it a whole. So there you go. That's only a couple of the battles of Vicksburg, which that Raymond one was pretty good. Needed to be had by the Union for sure.
Did.
But we ain't done yet because coming up next episode, we got the last three opening battles before we get to the actual siege of Vicksburg, which is going to be the battles of Champion Hill, which is an A-class battle, the Battle of Big Black River Bridge, and the Battle of Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
So we got 2 B's and an A, but don't get your hopes up because literally all 3 of these battles are... The episode's probably going to be about 25 minutes because they're not that long.
Right.
But important nonetheless, still had to be done before we get to the inevitable Siege of Vicksburg, which takes place May 18th to July 4th. So we're going to cover all that siege up until the capture of Vicksburg in one episode, but then the subsequent, because it starts May 18th, but then we still got battles taking place in May and June. So we're going to do all those other after we talk about the siege. But since, we do them in order.
Right.
Vicksburg started the 18th. We do it first.
Yep.
And then we got a lot of battles between after the Siege of Vicksburg leading up into the Battle of Gettysburg. We got lots going on there, and even including, there's so much going on, dude. It's so crazy. So crazy. This next 2 months are going to be just freaking action-packed. And then we got the Battle of Chickamauga, which is one of the bloodiest and deadliest battles of the whole war, too. 1863 was just freaking crazy, dude. We got all that coming up. We're not going nowhere. We got lots left to cover here in the battles of the American Civil War, because this is only 1863. We got 2 years legitimately left of the war, which means we got about a year and a half good left of this podcast, so we ain't going nowhere. So we'll see you next for 3 more battles leading up to the big old bad Siege of Vicksburg. We are the Mouth of Michiganders with
Bang dang.